Imagine hearing thousands of tons of rock collapse behind you. The lights disappear. Dust fills the tunnel. Every exit is buried. Your radio is silent, and nobody above the ground knows whether you are still alive. Now imagine waiting in that darkness long enough for the batteries in your helmet to become more valuable than food. Some people survived underground for hours. Others waited for weeks while rescuers drilled through solid rock, crawled through flooded caves, and built machines that had never existed before. In several of these cases, the people trapped below were officially feared dead before a faint sound, a handwritten note, or a camera proved otherwise. These are 7 of the most impossible underground rescues in history. Number 7. Jefferson Island. The day a lake disappeared into a mine. On November 20th, 1980, an oil drilling crew was working from a platform on Lake Peigneur in Louisiana. Beneath the lake was the Jefferson Island salt mine, where dozens of miners were working through a network of tunnels. The drill above was supposed to enter an oil deposit. Instead, it pierced the roof of the mine. At first, the opening was small, then lake water began pouring through it. Salt dissolves in water, so the hole expanded as the lake drained into the tunnels. Inside the mine, workers heard strange noises and felt air moving through passages that should have been still. Water appeared where no water belonged. The miners did not wait for an explanation. They climbed into vehicles and moved toward the elevators while the tunnels flooded behind them. Above ground, the drilling platform began to tilt. A whirlpool formed in the lake, pulling barges, trees, and equipment toward the opening. The flow became so powerful that part of a nearby canal temporarily reversed direction. But underground, all 50 miners escaped. Their fast reaction mattered more than understanding the disaster. They recognized that the mine was changing and left immediately. A lake had begun disappearing above their heads, yet every worker made it out alive. Number 6. The Qixia Gold Mine Rescue. On January 10, 2021, an explosion tore through the Hushan gold mine near Qixia in eastern China. 22 miners were trapped hundreds of meters underground. Communication lines were destroyed, and rescuers initially had no way to know where the men were or whether anyone had survived. Teams began drilling narrow shafts into possible refuge areas. For days, there was no clear answer. Then a drill line returned to the surface carrying a handwritten note. 12 miners had been located alive. They described injuries, exhaustion, and another worker separated deeper inside the mine. That small piece of paper changed the rescue completely. Food, medicine, communication equipment, and warm supplies could now be lowered through boreholes. The miners used a telephone line to speak with rescuers while larger escape shafts were drilled. The operation remained dangerous because water and debris blocked parts of the mine. 2 weeks after the explosion, 11 miners were brought to the surface. Some wore eye coverings because sudden daylight could damage eyes adapted to darkness. 1 miner had died, and others remained missing. It was not a rescue without tragedy, but 11 people returned after an explosion had sealed them underground and silence had made survival seem almost impossible. Number 5. Johann Westhauser and the Riesending Cave. Johann Westhauser was not trapped inside a mine. He was exploring Riesending, Germany's deepest cave, when falling rock struck his head in June 2014. He was roughly 1,000 meters below the surface, inside a system of narrow passages, underground waterfalls, vertical shafts, and sections where a stretcher could barely fit. One companion stayed with him while another began the exhausting climb toward the entrance to call for help. Reaching Westhauser was only the beginning. He could not simply walk out, and rescuers could not carry him along a straight tunnel. Every meter required ropes, anchors, medical checks, and teams positioned throughout the cave. More than 700 specialists from several countries became involved. Underground camps were established so rescuers could rest without returning to the surface. The stretcher had to be tilted, lowered, lifted, and passed through spaces never designed to carry an injured person. Water soaked the teams. Vertical sections required carefully coordinated rope systems. One mistake could injure Westhauser again, or trap the rescuers beside him. After 12 days, the stretcher finally reached daylight. The rescue became one of the largest cave operations ever attempted. Westhauser survived because hundreds of people turned an almost impossible route into thousands of small, controlled movements. Number 4. The Quecreek Nine. On July 24, 2002, 9 coal miners in Pennsylvania accidentally broke into an abandoned mine filled with water. The maps they relied on were inaccurate. When the wall opened, millions of gallons began rushing into the active tunnels. The miners moved toward higher ground, but the water followed. They were cold, soaked, and trapped about 70 meters below the surface. The rising water threatened to fill the remaining air pocket. The men reportedly tied themselves together so that if one was swept away, the others would not lose him in the darkness. Above ground, rescuers drilled an air hole and forced compressed air into the chamber. That helped protect the miners' shrinking pocket of breathable space. A much larger shaft was needed for the rescue capsule, but drilling equipment broke and progress stopped while replacement parts were rushed to the site. For 77 hours, the miners waited in cold water while crews pumped the flooded mine and drilled toward them. When the shaft finally reached the chamber, a narrow capsule was lowered underground. The men decided who would leave first and who would wait. One by one, all 9 were lifted to the surface. The final miner emerged alive as rescuers and families watched under floodlights. A mistake on an old map had nearly buried them beneath an underground lake, but every one of the Quecreek Nine survived. Number 3. The Beaconsfield Miners. On April 25, 2006, a rockfall struck the Beaconsfield gold mine in Tasmania. Miner Larry Knight was killed. Todd Russell and Brant Webb were trapped nearly 1 kilometer underground inside the small steel cage of the machine they had been operating. For 5 days, nobody knew they were alive. The men shared the limited food they had, including a single cereal bar, and tried to conserve their helmet batteries. Then rescuers detected them. A narrow hole allowed a microphone to reach the cage. After days of darkness and uncertainty, the men could finally speak to the surface. Food, water, dry clothing, lights, and music players were pushed through a pipe. But finding the miners was not the same as freeing them. Around 12 meters of extremely hard rock still separated them from the rescue tunnel. Large drilling equipment created most of the route, but the final section was too dangerous for careless force. Workers used hand tools, diamond saws, low-impact explosives, and eventually a hydraulic rock splitter. Russell and Webb could hear the rescue work getting closer, but they also knew every vibration might trigger another collapse. After 14 days underground, rescuers broke through. The 2 men reached the surface shortly before dawn and moved their identification tags to the safe side of the mine board. They did not leave on stretchers, they walked out. Number 2. The 33 miners of Chile. On August 5, 2010, part of the San Jose copper and gold mine collapsed beneath Chile's Atacama Desert. 33 miners were trapped roughly 700 meters underground. The main route was blocked, and rescue teams did not know whether the refuge chamber had survived. The miners had limited emergency food. They divided tiny portions and organized routines while drill teams searched from the surface. Day after day, drill bits missed the refuge. 17 days after the collapse, one finally broke into a passage near the men. When the drill returned to the surface, a note was attached. It announced that all 33 were alive in the shelter. The problem was now clear, but the solution was not. A borehole wide enough for a person had to be drilled through hundreds of meters of rock. 3 drilling plans were attempted while food, medicine, cameras, and communication lines were sent below. NASA specialists provided advice on medical care, confinement, and the narrow capsule that would carry each miner upward. For 69 days, the miners lived beneath the desert. Then a rescue capsule descended through the finished shaft. Each man had to enter alone and spend the journey surrounded by metal and rock. On October 13th, the first miner reached the surface. Over the following hours, the capsule returned again and again until all 33 were safe. The last rescuer then entered it, leaving the refuge empty for the first time in more than 2 months. Number 1. The Thai Cave Rescue. On June 23, 2018, 12 boys from the Wild Boars soccer team entered Thailand's Tham Luang Cave with their assistant coach. Heavy rain flooded the passages behind them. Their bicycles remained outside, but the team had disappeared into a mountain. Water blocked experienced divers. Visibility was almost zero. Currents were strong, and parts of the route were so narrow that divers had to remove equipment to squeeze through. 9 days after the group vanished, British divers John Valanthan and Rick Stanton reached a muddy ledge deep inside the cave. Their lights revealed 13 people. Every boy and the coach was alive. Finding them created another problem. The route out included long flooded sections that were dangerous even for elite cave divers. More rain was coming, oxygen levels were a concern, and waiting for the water to disappear could take months. Pumps removed enormous amounts of water, while rescue teams placed guide ropes and air cylinders through the cave. The extraction began on July 8th. Each boy was fitted with diving equipment and guided through water, tight restrictions, and dry chambers by specialist teams. 4 boys came out on the first day. 4 more followed on the second. On the third day, the remaining boys and their coach were removed. After 18 days underground, all 13 had survived. The operation cost the life of former Thai Navy SEAL Saman Kunan, who died while supplying air cylinders along the route. His death showed how dangerous the cave remained, even for trained rescuers. The team survived because divers, engineers, medics, soldiers, volunteers, and local workers solved one impossible section at a time. These rescues happened in different countries and different kinds of darkness. Some survivors were miners doing ordinary work. Others entered a cave expecting to return the same afternoon. They lived because they conserved food, protected air pockets, stayed together, and made themselves detectable. But survival below ground was only half the story. Above them, rescuers drilled toward sounds they could barely hear, built capsules from scratch, carried stretchers through waterfalls, and entered flooded passages where a single broken line could make them disappear too. The ground is supposed to be the solid thing beneath us. In every story on this list, it became a locked door, and every rescue required somebody to find a new way through it. Which underground rescue did you find the most unbelievable? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, leave a like and subscribe for more entertaining videos about strange history, bizarre science, psychology, mysteries, and unbelievable true stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.